Have you ever wondered to yourself, should I run Pyroblast or Red Elemental Blast? Probably, considering you're watching the video. Welcome to Magic 101, a series focused on making new players experts without the 10,000 hours. On the surface, the cards do basically the same thing. Either counter a spell or destroy a permanent. The only difference is a single 2-letter word, if. Genuinely, those 2 letters make a huge difference on how the card can and should be played. In a general sense, it means that Pyroblast and Hydroblast can be used regardless of the properties of the target. So you could target a land. It wouldn't do anything, but you can still cast it. Remember, in order to cast a spell that targets, you need to have valid targets for that spell. For Pyroblast, any spell and or permanent is a legal target. It's just a destroy or counter effect is dependent on what that permanent is. With Red Elemental Blast, you can only cast it if the target is blue. Now you know the difference. You might be wondering, what difference does this actually make? Why would I cast a removal spell when it won't remove the permanent? Well, you might be surprised to know that this niche interaction comes up fairly frequently. This is one scenario where the Elemental Blasts are superior. We have 2 situations to consider, one for each node. So let's imagine someone casts a Thassa's Oracle. We can't let this resolve. We cast a Red Elemental Blast trying to counter it. For this example, we're only going to consider redirection effects. So in response to our Red Elemental Blast, they cast a Deflecting Swat, targeting Red Elemental Blast. As Deflecting Swat resolves, since Red Elemental Blast can only legally target blue spells, Deflecting Swat cannot redirect Red Elemental Blast to target itself. The only legal target on the stack is the Thassa's Oracle, so it must be countered. The target cannot be changed. If we were using Pyroblast instead, the defender could successfully would redirect Pyroblast to target Deflecting Swat. Then Thassa's Oracle would resolve. So let's consider the other node. Our opponent goes turn 1 Island Mystic Remora, they pass to us, and we play Mountain Red Elemental Blast. We don't want to give them any more draws than we have to. They exile a card from their hand to cast Misdirection. There are no other blue permanents on the battlefield, so the only valid target is the Remora. Again, if this was a Pyroblast, they could change the target to be a land. And then the Remora would still be on the field and our turn would be wasted. This also extends to cards like Flagbearer and Spellskite. Neither of them are actually able to redirect an Elemental Blast, as the creatures themselves aren't valid targets. Spellskite's ability can only be used if Spellskite itself is a legal target. Vivi, Ral, and Stella are all examples of Storm decks. At least when played in bracket 4 and 5, in lower tiers they might be Spellslinger. I would like to show you a pattern that all 3 of these decks have. They all use Pyroblast at a higher rate than they do Red Elemental Blast, at an average of about 3%. This alone doesn't mean anything. So let's compare it to decks that don't care about Storm Count or Magecraft. Atali, Krenko, Magda, and Inala. We can see that these decks use Red Elemental Blast at a higher rate than Pyroblast. This pattern does make complete sense. The flexibility in being able to cast these spells regardless of the situation matters more in the Storm decks than it does the others. It doesn't just translate into 1 more damage from your Grape Shot or 3 more cards in the graveyard from your Brain Freeze. Imagine you have a Vivi with a Curiosity effect on it. Wasting that Pyroblast is now equivalent to an Ancestral Recall. In Rao, Pyroblast is another chance to get him to flip, or the ability to get an extra loyalty counter for that game-winning ultimate. With Stella, it provides you with extra card advantage and possibly getting her activated ability online. In my opinion, the flexibility and freedom in casting Pyroblast makes it much more desirable in Storm decks. And in decks that don't care about Storm, the protection and the resilience from redirection effects makes Red Elemental Blast more desirable. And the data backs this up. Hydroblast and Pyroblast also allow you to get extra Magecraft triggers. REB and BEB may be dead cards on some occasions where there are no legal targets, but their equivalents will always be able to get you a blocker from Third Path or Young Pyromancer. Anecdotally, the first time I encountered this question was when I was making my own Pauper deck. It was a mono blue Terra/Delver. I was looking online and every single deck had a 4 of Hydroblast. But if you look at the mono red decks, i.e. mono red Madness, they use a 4 of Elemental Blast, not Pyroblast. Red Elemental Blast can't be redirected by Standard Bearer, although you should probably have sided it out at that point. And monetarily, it is significantly cheaper, which is where the appeal of Pauper is as a format. Madness is also one of those decks that doesn't tend to care about storm counts. However, in Mono Blue Terror, it cares about the number of instants and sorceries in your graveyard. So even if the opponent doesn't play a red deck, you can target anything just to get that Hydroblast in the graveyard and make your snakes cheaper. The same is true with Modern and Legacy when it comes to Murktide Regent or Abhorrent Oculus. Hydro and Pyro are a lot easier to get into the graveyard because they're less conditional and they're never going to be dead cards that can't leave your hand. In summary, they're both good, and I would say what you should use depends on the situation. In a format where misdirection effects are fairly common, like Commander, maybe Red Elemental Blast is better, especially if your deck doesn't rely on storm counts. At the end of the day, it's up to you. And I do appreciate price. Red Elemental Blast is significantly cheaper than Pyroblast, and depending on the pod, these differences are unlikely to appear. But I do hope you've learnt something new in order to level up your strategies and your heads-up play.